Light it.
Welcome back to the Triple Option presented by Wendy's. It's my honor to welcome the head coach of the Ohio State Buckeyes and the 2024-25 CFB national champion, Ryan Day. You had about a month to sink it in, bruh. So,
congratulations, Coach.
Real quick, though. The cool thing is once you win a national championship, all problems go away. There will be none, Mark. You won one, I won a couple, and Ryan, it's over. You don't have to, no more problems.
No more problems.
It literally lasted until the confetti hit the ground, and then it's on.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks for joining us, and I'm going to hit you with a couple of things, and this is really cool to be able to do this with you, a guy that I love, and I love your family, and congrats. So, people have asked me, so I'm going to ask you. There was a moment in the first one in 2006 when Percy Harvin caught the screen pass. I was ripping everybody on the sideline. Everybody's, because we were up pretty good. And, we don't, I just kept thinking not over till it's over. And Percy Harvin caught a bubble screen. He got the first down. I remember watching the official. They measured it. And he goes, first down. I look at the clock and I said, this sucker is over. And it's like,
Yep.
It flushed me. Did you have that moment during the game?
I had two moments. I think the first moment was when in the Texas game on that fourth down when Jack had that sack and the ball bounced right up to him. That ball hadn't bounced that way in previous games, in those moments for us. And when it bounced right up into him and he started running, it wasn't then. It was when I looked back to make sure there was no flags on the ground. And I said, you know what? I think we're going to win the national championship because that ball just hadn't bounced for us, as you know, the Georgia game and the Clemson game and so there was that moment. And then in the Notre Dame game in the national championship, there was a moment where I was doing that. We were up 31-7, and I'm doing the math on this, saying, and as you know, when you get to that moment, you're like, okay, we got this game. We just have to eat up clock. We have to run the ball, and there's no way that they can win the game. Well, we called a reverse to Emeka, and Emeka's one of my favorite players of all time. And I just said, no matter what, you come back with that ball and you hand the ball to the official. And somehow the ball got punched out. And I said to myself, oh my gosh, now this thing's into balance. And so then now it's panic mode. And, we call the shot to Jeremiah, he catches it, but it wasn't then. It wasn't even, after we kicked the field goal. It was, when they ran that first down play and the clock kept running, and I finally just took the headset and said, get off of me.
I love that, man. That's great. But Coach, you've had a lot of success at Ohio State. We know that's a high pressure job, a lot of wins, a lot of championships. What was it like taking over that program after Coach Meyer, and how did he help you in that transition?
Yeah, Man, it was such a blessing to, be able to, as a first-time head coach, step into a situation where there were so many things in place for us, and what Coach, had. And first off, the first 2 years that I was there, it was like being an apprentice, and I was learning from the best in the business. And I say this all the time: where do you learn to become a head coach? You go to med school to become a doctor. You go to law school to become a lawyer. Where do you learn to be a coach? Become a coach, especially at Ohio State, because It's not like any other job in the country. And so to learn on a daily basis how that looked, the ups, the downs, everything that comes with it, and then learning how to, put it all together, and the decisions on staff and recruiting and just all those things. And so when that all happened, at the Rose Bowl, there's a lot of emotion there. There was, you're grateful for the opportunity, but you're also like, man, how am I going to step in these shoes?
Right.
But, you can't worry about those things. And, you talk about Mick Marotti and Mark Pantoni and all the pieces that are still here. But along the way, you have to find your own voice.
Right.
You're talking about a Hall of Fame coach that you're coming behind. And so, it was, along the years, you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about the position. You learn a lot about coaching, and you try to get as much advice as you can, and you try to be yourself. And, but was obviously, very fortunate to learn from the best and have a situation where, you make the transition with a lot of pieces in place.
Let's talk for a quick minute about this. You mentioned the staff, and you've lost 2 coordinators and I think a line coach. And uh, that's one of the things that really haunted me is that players are fluid, you're going to lose good players. That's just what happens. And I started that system. I'm not sure if you still do it, the 1 through 5, where I would meet with Gene Smith every year and said, these are my 5s. Ryan Day's a 5. Greg Schiano's a 5. Dan Mullen, you know what a 5 is. We're not losing a 5. You got to pay, that's just ante up, and we got to do what we got to do. The 4s you'd like to keep, the 3s are transitory. Whatever happens, happens. So a guy goes to Penn State and a guy goes to the NFL as a coordinator. And then I think Justin did he go to the NFL? Justin went
to the Arizona Cardinals. Yep.
So here you are, regrouping and all that. Talk to us about, first of all, the process, how those things happen. You don't have to go too deep, and then how you move forward.
Yep. Well, I think maybe it was Belichick or somebody said they're champagne problems, and when you win one, there's a lot that comes with that. And I think for us, because we ended the season so much later than almost everybody in the country, so many staffs were set. We missed a couple weeks of recruiting. You think about that Tennessee game was played on December 21st. We ended the season on January 20th. So that's a whole month that's different. I think that's significant. And so after the confetti falls and there's going to be things like this that come up, to your point, like there's going to be opportunity for guys. And but we have a core in place here that, to your point, we want to make sure that there's consistency in all 3 phases. And when you talk about our offense and what Brian Hartline has done in recruiting, and he was the coordinator, and then Chip came in, and then now he's the coordinator. This is a guy who's paid his dues here. He didn't just jump to the next job. He learned and grew and got better with every year. And I think his receiver play is the best there is in the country. And so you get guys like Keenan Bailey and different people within the program that you just want to work with. And then on defense, it's the same thing. Tim Walton, Matt Guerrieri, James Laurinaitis, Larry Johnson. I mean, they were integral parts of the day-to-day operation. And so we want to make sure that there's consistency in those things. And we're not going to change, the Ohio State defense is the Ohio State defense. The Ohio State offense is the Ohio State offense. And we want to make sure that we bring folks in that embrace that. And those are big decisions, as you know. I mean, these are the decisions that, make or break where you're at. And it's the same thing with special teams.
Coach, one thing I admire about you guys all season long was that when something didn't go as planned, you guys learned from it, bounced back from it, and got better from it. I mean, that comes from the head man, and it trickles down. So that's one thing I admired the most. And I say, you probably don't say this, and nobody in Columbus says this, but I say the best thing that happened to Ohio State was losing that game versus Michigan, because I felt like you guys, I felt like it banded y'all together. I felt like y'all came out with a vengeance, with a sense of urgency, and y'all had an epic national championship title run. What was said after that loss in the game in the locker room that kind of galvanized this team together to get the mind set moving forward to go win a national championship like you guys did?
Yeah, when you don't win that game, you don't just wake up the next day and move on. I mean, literally, there's like a mourning, phase and grieving phase you have to go through. It's just the way it is, man. And there's a lot that comes with that, and you have to take a step back and let the emotion clear. And what we did was, first off, we got everybody together, because at that point, there's narratives being thrown out everywhere. There's all types of things that are going on, and talking about players, talking about coaches. What's going to happen? A guy's going to get fired. Who made mistakes in this area and who's to blame? And so the first thing you had to do is to bring everybody together to make sure that you set the narrative for what it is, the truth. And the truth is there were certain things that were done in that game that, cost us to lose the game. And so we brought everybody together and identified what those things were. And guys have to take accountability. And there was guys challenging each other. There was conflict. There was, groups going at each other. But at the end of the meeting, it was guys walking arm in arm outside the room, because we talked about, here are the things that we're going to do to get these things fixed. Because, as players, they want to see their leader like, all right, what are the answers? What are we gonna what do we do wrong? What are we gonna do to get this fixed? And then there was a bunch of dudes who stood up and said, man, like, do you still believe that we can win the national championship? Because if you don't, like, get out of this room, because we all believe. And so that was really the genesis of the conversation. And then we put that plan together, and then you put one practice in front of another. You can't solve that problem 2 weeks, before the Tennessee game. You just got to go back to work. And the biggest thing that I kept thinking about is, what Bill Parcells just, they just coach the team, man. Like, just keep coaching the team. Don't worry about all the other things, and trust in the coaches and the players that are with you. And that's it. And I also told them that it was an opportunity to write one of the best stories in the history of college football. As hard as that was, you got the pen and you can do it. And they believed in it. And then once we got that Tennessee game going, we got some momentum. It went from there.
Y'all did that, Coach, for sure.
When you win a championship, or really the profession we chose, you seek counsel. You want to run the spread offense. Let's go visit the West Coast. We want to run the 4-3 versus 3-4. There's people to go visit, and you seek advice. All of a sudden, you're now dealing with expectations, and there's very few that sit in a chair that say, 134 teams, there's one that lifts that trophy at the end of the year. Mac Brown was my guy. He was a guy that I felt the weight of the world year after year, day after day of, if that doesn't look like a national championship, it ate me alive, because I knew that's it. Anything other than that, we screwed it up. Have you thought about that yet? Is it starting to hit you that, when you walk in the weight room, or you're looking at your players, you're looking at your staff, you listen to them, say, damn, this just doesn't, this is not the level. And then where do you seek that counsel? So 2 questions. Has that hit you at the expectations? And then where do you seek that advice?
Yeah. Yeah. So in the profession, it's guys that you've coached with, but also, like, we've had these conversations, Jim Tressel and even Coach Cooper, just about, living in this world and coaching at this place, because nobody really understands this place. And you've been here and coached here. And so, certainly, in the football world, that's important. Also for me, like, I have become really close with a guy by the name of Clint Bruce, who, is in the Navy SEALs, and he's been, really good for me, and just, the process and understanding what it means to be a leader. And, the soldiers are, like, doing all the fighting. It's your job as a head coach and as a leader and as a captain to, like, look along the horizon and figure out what's coming next. And there's just so many parallels to the military and to coaching that, he and I would share a lot of conversations. And just by chance, we played down in Dallas, like, where he's stationed is like 5 minutes from our hotel. And he just came over and gave our team an unbelievable talk about just how, when they go to a certain hotspot, in Afghanistan or different places, and they set up shop, and they got a few days to kind of get, regulated with the area. And then they create a storm, and then leave. And, like, that was what we were doing, and it was really cool. And so just trying to find as many people who live in this world, like you're talking about, of, like, being in the top 1% of 1%, 'cause nobody, if you're not chasing that elite 1% of 1%, you don't quite understand what it takes on a daily basis and what comes with it. So try to find as many of those people in my life as possible. And then, like you said, yeah, the expectation, it comes from the players. And one of the things that we've done is, we create this leadership committee that we vote on before spring ball, and then we re-vote on it after spring ball, and we write the expectations up on the board, and Mick and I go through it with the leadership committee. And if they don't agree with it, like, we change it, we work through it, but they have to agree with it. And usually, like, they're the ones that want it harder. So, like, if somebody's late and there's dawn patrol, like, they get thrown out of the locker room. Well, they want them thrown out for like 2 weeks. But as long as they're all on board with that, and they're the ones that decide on that, then they take accountability, they take ownership, and the rest of the guys on the team, they know that this was decided by the leadership committee. And so that part of it is critical. Now, we're going from winning one to now having to repeat. And I know, and I've, done a lot of research on this, on how we have to rebite at a big time level and make sure that, no one's taking a deep breath.
Coach, you talked about the leadership group that you have. Clearly, you have a tremendous amount of leadership on your team, and that's going to be leading. And you just signed a much-deserved extension after winning a national championship. And I see right away you made $1 million donation to the mental health programs at the Ohio State University Medical Center. Why is that important to you? And what do you do to help support your players at a place that stress is at an extremely high level to be able to perform. And how do you support them mentally throughout the process?
Well, Columbus and Ohio State is just known for philanthropy and the charities, and whether it's the Cancer Research Hospital or Children's Hospital downtown. I mean, you just kind of get indoctrinated into that here, and I think it's important as the head coach to be a leader in that area and just to make sure that we're doing our part and giving back to all those who do so much for us. And we have the best fan base in America, and so we want to make sure we're giving back. And it's also a great example for our players to see how important it is, because nowadays, NIL's involved. And now guys are, fans have to travel across the country to these playoff games. And so we just want to make sure that, they understand how much we appreciate them. And I think it's a big part of giving back. And, the mental health thing has always been, important to me based on the way that I grew up and some of the things that, I experienced growing up. So, through Nationwide Children's and through OSU, I think Columbus is the leader in the country in the mental health space. And I think it's good for Buckeye Nation, for Columbus, for Ohio to see, guys who are at the biggest, stage there is, where they say big, strong guys who are still willing to say, hey man, like, yeah, I'm struggling today. I need a little help. It's just like I do if I, sprain my ankle.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move to the CFP. First of all, the experience, what would you change? And then, if there's a critique, I hear a lot about, the Indiana, the SMU, and what was it, Boise, the seeding. And then, do they get the same swing at the prize as a team that's playing, a much more difficult schedule and conference? So first of all, the experience, what would you change? And then kind of talk about just those guys deserve the same shot that a team that plays in the SEC or Big Ten?
Right. I think first off, the experience is something we really got to learn from. I think that the player experience can be much better. I think that the focus needs to be on the players, and I think we need to look at a lot of it, because the national championship is not run by a bowl. The other ones are, but even the ones that are run by a bowl, as you guys remember, there used to be events. There was a lot that came with that. Now that's no longer the case. It's just like being on a road game, except you're there a day earlier, but there's no events. Like, nobody going on any events. Nobody's leaving the hotel. I think that, we need to consider moving the hotels outside of these big cities, because we're not going to these events anymore. So I think being a little bit more secluded and looking at some of those locations is just better for everybody, especially for the players again. And I think that, we need to pour into the players. I mean, these are the guys that are doing the work. So I think that we need, the best food there is that can possibly be served to these guys. I think it should be the best conditions. I think we should try to find as many mementos for these guys that possibly can be done. Just little things that money can't buy, but it stays with them forever. And then in terms of the seating, I think it was clear this year that the automatic buys, were a little out of whack. When you see kind of how it all shook out, I think they need to rethink that. I understand, why in the first year it was done that way, but I think that if you win your conference, sure, you should get in.
Yeah.
Say you get a bye, I think that's a little much. I think
they should go to the top 4 seeds.
That's right.
Yes.
And rank those guys from there.
Yes. All right, Coach. You've done a great job. You're a former quarterback coach. You've done a great job of developing quarterbacks that you've recruited. You've also been able to identify, quarterbacks coming in the transfer portal like Will Howard did. How do you balance developing quarterbacks while also keeping an eye like in the transfer portal as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. When you look at the quarterbacks who have had success in the last 5 years, I mean, there's a lot of them that have been older guys who have transferred from schools, because I'd like to hear and tell you that, transferring from schools isn't the right thing to do, and, it's not going to help in your development, but, the numbers tell you differently.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys have found different places. Will Howard's a great example of that, but, so is Penix and Bo Nix, and you start going through the list. There's a lot of them. Right. Now, I believe in bringing in, quarterbacks and developing them into your offense and keeping them for multiple years. CJ Stroud and Justin Fields, both went to the NFL after 3 years.
Right.
And so that was tough because you're playing against guys who are 4th and 5th year seniors, 22 and 23 years old, and that matters at quarterback.
Yes.
So it's this balance that we're constantly trying to figure out of developing your own and having somebody there for multiple years, but also having somebody mature enough to be able to sustain a whole season and play at a high level.
Thank
you. You cracked me up when you said, about the player centric on those trips. And I mean, they're getting paid now, so it's a little bit different. But back in the day, I got so pissed off.
you.
We're playing Alabama, and I look out. I just look out the plane. I see who's coming on the plane, and there's a majority of them. I have no idea what they do. No, and I mean, all of a sudden I see their kids and which is fine. I mean, that's none of my business, but that's. And then I remember talking to Hireman or talking to some of our players that just put in. They did not get a day off. There was no day off from July. Remember we used to go away for the summer? Now there's no days off. I went through the calendar with our players one time. The only time I gave them a week off for spring break. That was it, when they're really off. And so we play Alabama, and I remember I'm walking up to the podium, and I'm thinking about the majority of families can't afford to go to a Big Ten championship game, to a playoff game, a national championship game. They can't afford that. Yet I'm seeing the assistant AD to the assistant AD to the assistant AD, the assistant to the conference commissioner to the assistant, the point I'm getting to, right?
I do.
All these people, and I'm looking at my boys over there, and their freaking parents and uncle or sister can't go to the game.
Yeah.
And I walked up on the podium, and for 10 minutes, they kept asking questions. I said, no, we got to change this. And they did. They changed. They gave them, I think, $2,500 for a fan, which is still not enough.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great point. I think that's your job. I'm not preaching to you, but
No.
you got to push that, man. I mean, you got to push. It's got to be reasonable. But the player and their family has got to be number one, and then let's kind of start filling in the blanks after that.
That's it. Yeah, I totally agree. And I felt like while we were going through it, once the dust settled, that situations like this was an opportunity for me to speak up and to say that, no, I think we need to do better. And over the next few months, for those who went through the different games, I think the way that we've historically done it, it's great, it's fine, but we need to really do a better job because, like you said, the most important people here are the players. And I think it's easy sometimes, unless someone's advocating for them, to forget about that. And they deserve the best of the best. And so, yeah, to your point, we got to make sure we're constantly ringing that bell.
All right, as we close up, we're 1-1 in tennis, and I'm never going to play again because I'm getting older and you're getting younger. And have we played golf?
We played
your
golf.
ass in golf, I think, right? Can I kick your ass in golf?
No.
He's a sandbagger anyway, Coach. I know.
No, tennis. Ryan's he's a country club dude, man. He's got like a real tennis swing.
That's not true. Although I will kick your ass. Give me another month. I'll get going.
In what?
Either. I say we play tennis, and then we play golf, and then we'll have to figure out a third one to break the tie.
Oh,
bowling or ping pong or something.
So you're playing. I didn't know you were playing golf much.
Not, but I think
out there at Muirfield, Coach.
Possibly play a big time course here in the next couple of months. So I got to get my game going a little bit.
Like the one down in Georgia.
Yeah, it looks like maybe there might be an opportunity. So I can't screw that one up.
No.
Coach Dave, before we let you go, man, on the podcast, we do one thing where we let the guests picks who they want to ask a question to. So we've been showering you and peppering you with questions for 27 minutes. Now it's your time. If you want to throw one back at either one of us, man, it's your opportunity. Don't speak now or forever hold your peace.
No, that caught me off guard. I think it's probably just for both of you guys is like, as you guys watched this from your guys' perspective this year, because when we're in it, and I said, we're like train rats. We just went from game to game to game.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's over. And I don't even think it's sunk in yet that we won the national championship. I almost wanted to keep playing.
Right.
But I guess from your guys' perspective, as you watched the playoffs and you watched the season, what was probably the biggest thing that you guys saw in the last, from November all the way to January that was different this year than the last few years? Because I think, all right, we went through it all, and now we're trying to adapt because spring ball for us might be different because we played 16 games. And so I guess just from your perspective, as you guys covered these games, what did you notice significantly about this season as opposed to maybe the seasons in the past?
I'll jump, Mark, and then let you
Go ahead.
close up. So the first thing is that I think it was phenomenal. I think the fact that the greatest players in the country kept playing.
Yes.
That would break my heart back in the day. The Mark Ingrams of the world, these freaking phenomenal players would sit out the Outback
Not me,
Bowl or
coach.
sit out.
I didn't do that.
I know. But I mean, that just used, and it first happened at the Cotton Bowl when Denzel Ward came up to me and his family said, we're not going to play. I said, what do you mean you're not going to play? So that number one, and then the fact that you're still alive, that game at the end of the year, that history used to say, you're done. You got to eat that thing for 365. You don't anymore. Now you just rally up and keep going. The thing I am worried about, Ryan, is that why would you dare play? You're opening, I think, with Texas next year. Why?
Yeah.
Other than it's good for the game, it's great for the fans, it's good for the player, it's good.
Sure.
But once again, you're evaluated on one thing, not good. You're evaluated at the end of the season. So I'm worried that these teams play these just god-awful schedules, horrific schedules.
Somewhere in the playoffs.
And you're like, no one's talking about that. So there's got to be some kind of analytics done to say, okay, this game is worth this.
Yep.
So you play it. Boise State and SMU can solve all those problems. They can go schedule the big dogs.
Right.
And go play for, there'll be no more conversation about are they worthy. Same with maybe in Indiana, which, I mean, great, they all had great years, but go play Tennessee and the Wolverines and whoever, Texas.
Yeah.
And then, so those are the two thoughts. Number one, I thought it was fantastic. Number two, I'm worried about the non-conference games.
Yeah. I think just to go back to that point, I think it's we play 9 conference games in the Big Ten. And then when you add Texas, now you're talking about 10 real games on the schedule.
Yes.
Like that matters.
Yes.
One less loss by somebody in the league, and the wear and tear of the season as well. Go ahead, Mark.
but for me, Coach, it was. I think that in the previous years when there was 14 playoff or the BCS were only 2, you had teams that weren't fighting for anything towards the end of the year. I felt like there was me and Coach and everyone on the show. We talked about this, that there was probably in the last 2-3 weeks of the season there was 20 teams, that had life. What I mean? You talk about the Big 12 with Arizona State and BYU and Colorado. You talk about people in the ACC. You had all these teams that still had hope. They still had a belief that they had a chance to get to, the college football playoff and, continue in the postseason. So I think that was what was most exciting for me, was that more teams had a belief. More teams had something to fight for towards the end of the year. So the games and the product that was being put on the field was, I thought it was really good. So I thought that was something that I noticed towards like November, towards the end of the year, that there was just so many more teams that had something to fight for, that's something to believe in. And I think that made a great product for us, in the later stages of the season. So that's something that I really noticed.
I think the other thing that I felt was that this format allows your team to grow.
Yes.
And, Coach, you remember like every game, like you lose this game, like your whole season's ruined.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a hard way to live now. Try losing a game in Columbus, Ohio. I mean, the world's coming to an end. I get it. But like, you still allow your team to grow as the season goes on, looking to peak towards the end of the season. And I think overall, it's a healthier approach, even though there's a lot more games.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, thanks, brother. All the best to the Dave family, and great hanging with you, man.
Yeah, much love. Appreciate you.
Coach, we appreciate you, man, and good luck. Good luck, man. Keep going.
All right, thanks.
Light it.